Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of FitRx. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Dennis, and my guest today is Julie Ruelle. She is a registered dietitian with over 20 years' experience making nutrition more accessible, honest, and practical. She's worked in a lot of different settings. I'll let her talk a little bit more about that. She currently is the lead nutritionist for a company called GoCoCo, which we'll talk about, which is an app to help people kind of understand what's healthy and maybe understand, about processed foods and, how to eat better. And again, we'll talk more about that, I'm sure. Uh, Today's episode is going to be a lot about processed foods, which you've heard me talk a lot about. I have probably debated, um, dietitians in the past because I feel like a lot of them, are taught the quote more conventional recommendations of the old food guide pyramid, which maybe we can get into a little bit of that. I don't know. Um, but one thing I know we can agree on because I've looked over her stuff is about processed foods. And if you listen to this podcast at all, you know that I talk a lot about that. And a lot of times, whether it's here on my podcast, in my clinic, probably my number one health tip for people is just to eat real foods, eat real whole foods. And I know that that's what she endorses. And so just kind of anxious to talk more a little bit about that. So, Miss Julie, thanks for being on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, and thanks for that great introduction. I like what you said about my background, making healthier choices practical and um, applicable and even affordable is something that I focus on as well.
Okay. Well, I guess, I introduced you a little bit, but tell us a little bit more about you, I guess, if you will. And you've been a nutritionist for a long time, but maybe just a little bit more about your background, why you got interested in nutrition, kind of how that's evolved over the years, and maybe even um, maybe how the changes maybe from, what you learned initially as a in school as a dietitian or nutritionist and kind of um, things that has changed in your mind over the years. I know that's a lot there, but
No, that sounds great. So yeah, I have been a dietitian for over 20 years, and I've worked in a lot of different aspects of the nutrition realm. So I've worked in clinical nutrition, inpatient and hospitals. I've worked in nursing homes. I kind of moved more towards corporate wellness, kind of trying to have a more of a focus on actual wellness and prevention. I've worked for better for you consumer packaged good companies. So I kind of have been on the inside of some of the food manufacturers as well. I'm currently working for GoCoCo, as you mentioned, which is an app that can help consumers make healthier food choices. You can scan any product and it'll give you a health score of 1 through 10, depending on the amount of calories, saturated fat, um, added sugars, things of that nature. And then to your point, it and me are very focused on ultra processed foods and reducing our reliance on those ultra processed foods. So GoCoCo alerts you to any ultra processed ingredients that are in a particular food. So that way you can make the choice that's best for you and your family. So I'm not here to, judge you or I'm giving you the information so you can make the decision that's best for you and your family. And a place that I usually like to start is talking about what is an ultra processed food because it is kind of a newish sort of term. It came around maybe around 2008, 2009, but it's still not, it doesn't have an official definition. But what I like to think about is there's a difference between ultra processed and processed. So processed foods, they can be beneficial. So processing would include things like grinding up grains to make bread and pastas. It would be turning milk into yogurt. It would be freezing vegetables for a longer shelf life. All of those things are processing, and those can certainly have more of a healthier role in our diets. Whereas ultra processing, those are things that maybe our grandparents wouldn't even consider food. They wouldn't even recognize them as a food item. It's things like colorings, additives, dyes, things to extend shelf life, things to change the texture, things to make our food shiny, things we don't necessarily need to have in our food supply. They're not contributing any nutrients. All they're contributing is a lot of chemicals that we're taking in. An ultra processed food product can have as many as 11, 12 additives added to just one product. And we really are starting to learn why that might not be as, it's not beneficial, why it's not beneficial, some of the detriments that that can have to our diets.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that. Why are they bad?
Yeah, so over 70% of the foods in a supermarket are considered ultra processed. That only leaves us 30% that are not processed. And ultra processed foods are linked to over 32 diseases, including diabetes, depression, and obesity. One study found that for every 10% increase in ultra processed food consumption, the risk of type 2 diabetes increased by 17%. So it's not just that we're out here trying to pick on food companies saying, "Oh, get those dyes and colorings out of the food products." There's a real reason for that. We're risking diabetes and obesity and heart disease and even depression by consuming these ultra processed foods.
Why do you think that it's taken so long to, I guess, realize the detriment of ultra processed foods? I mean, because they've been around for a while now, and there seems to be at least a little bit more recognition now.
Mhm.
Still, it's moving very slowly, and I don't know because if that's because the new administration and RFK, and maybe he's bringing it to the forefront. I don't know, but we're continuing to still get or to be very unhealthy as a nation, and I say this a lot. I've heard stats, and by the year 2030, which is just 5 years from now, one out of every three people will get cancer in their lifetime, which I feel like ultra processed foods is at least contributing to that. I think there's a lot of variables there, and but I mean it's at least contributing. But there doesn't seem to be a sense of urgency, to get rid of these things. What? Why do you think that is? What's going on there?
I think they taste good. So we're taking, let's just use yogurt for an example. Plain, full fat, plain full fat yogurt might not be palatable for everyone. So what do we do to it? We add some, instead of adding like strawberries, we add strawberry flavoring, strawberry coloring, sugar, artificial sugar. All of those things can be in just one container of yogurt. So we're making things taste a lot better to people when your taste buds get used to those sort of things. So now a regular strawberry doesn't taste sweet anymore because we're used to eating products that have not only strawberries added to them, but also sugar to make it a lot sweeter. So I think taste is a big deal. I think convenience is a very big reason why we're still eating a lot of ultra processed foods. Um, a lot of people are running from place to place to place, and they're not making sitting down and eating a meal, a home cooked meal, a priority, or maybe they can't do that, on many days of the week. So they're just grabbing quick and easy to put together things that are more convenient. And those tend to contain a lot of ultra processed ingredients. There's a reason they can sit on our shelves and in our freezers and everything for a long time. Um, I like to encourage people to use convenient products that are a lot healthier, like a banana comes in a skin, easy to port that around. Same thing with like a little clementine, easy to peel mandarin oranges. If you grab a couple of those and bring them with you, much better convenience foods than a lot of the other things out there that are, you know, much more processed.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I'm just curious, and I mentioned this a little bit in the introduction, but you've been a nutritionist for 20 years. What you learned in school, what you first, when you first got out, has anything changed as far as, I mean, maybe you thinking, yeah, maybe this, I thought this was important, 10, 15 years ago, but it's not really that important, or this is a lot more important than I thought it was. Or
Yeah.
do you pretty much think the same now as you did 20 years ago?
I think there's a few things I think about that. When I was in school, the big craze was low fat
Mm,
or fat free. So
hmm
low fat and fat free everything. You might remember some brands, they were in green boxes, they were sort of everywhere. They had the ice cream bars, we even had chips made out of like a fat substitute, Olean, if you remember that way back
Yeah, yeah.
in the day. So fat free and low fat was really a big deal when I was in school and right out of school. And I think that there were some sound principles behind that that maybe got lost in translation. So I think what we know now is that sure, maybe we should definitely reduce trans fats because those are ultra processed foods.
Hmm
Maybe we should keep our saturated fats in check. But heart healthy monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats are not the enemy.
hmm
So when I'm counseling people on nutrition, I'm not usually trying to cut their fat intake.
hmm
One thing that I am trying to cut in almost everyone I talk to is ultra processed foods, but another thing is sugar. So when we were removing the fat back then, a lot of times we were adding sugar. So we were
hmm
not really making a healthier product. And a lot of times when I'm talking to patients one-on-one now, I'll use the example of peanut butter. So, or a nut butter. If we're looking at a full fat nut butter, that fat is the good kind of fat. It's the unsaturated fat mostly. When we try to make a reduced fat version of nut butter or peanut butter, we remove some of the fat and we add sugar. And that is not making a healthier product.
hmm
Sugar also contributes to a lot of health issues, and sugar, for the most part, many times, we're not adding, pure unprocessed cane sugar. We're adding high fructose corn syrup or we're adding brown rice syrup. Uh, You probably know when we look at a food label, sometimes you'll see like five different types of added sugars in there.
hmm
And a lot of times companies are doing that so that they don't have to list it first because the ingredients are listed by order of weight on a product. So if you're reading like a cereal bar or a nutrition bar, for example, and you read the ingredients and the first ingredient is oats, I'm just being very optimistic here. The second ingredient is brown rice syrup. The third one is high fructose corn syrup. They might add all those different types of sugar so that they don't have to list that before the oats, so that the first thing you see is oats. So a little trickery with added sugars too. Um,
Um, Talking back to the ultra processed stuff, give us, I don't know, a handful of foods that come to your mind that are kind of the worst of the worst.
Sadly, it's a lot of things that are marketed to kids, which really bothers me because I've worked in maternal and infant nutrition for a number of years. So I do actually have some stats around that. Two out of three candies, almost half of all sports drinks, one in three sodas, and one in four snacks, all contain dyes, food dyes, which is an ultra processed food, that are currently being discussed banning from our food supply. So those are like the red dye number three and those types of dyes. So half of sports drinks, I don't think that's something, parents sometimes will think, okay, I'm not giving my kids soda, I'm giving them a sports drink. That's a better
Mhm,
alternative. But those sports drinks, unfortunately, are containing a lot of dyes and additives and things that kids really shouldn't be having. So if
mhm,
we kind of continue on that same thing, thinking about breakfast cereals are very ultra processed. They're
mhm,
usually using refined grains instead of whole grains, and then we're adding in a bunch of colors and flavorings. Those cereals are so brightly colored and
mhm,
just a lot of dyes in there. So it really does irk me that a lot of foods marketed towards children contain more of these ultra processed ingredients even than adult gearing foods.
mhm. So I guess kind of the million-dollar question is how can we improve? It's difficult. It really is. I mean, I have this conversation with patients probably daily. And I'll say eat real whole foods, shop in the outside aisles of the grocery store because that's where most of your real food is. And that all sounds good, but it's hard. People work full-time jobs. I
Mhm.
mean, they're in a hurry in the morning, so they may not have time to cook breakfast. They get home at night, and I'm even guilty of this some, and like you, I kind of teach this stuff, but I'll get home in the evening and I'm tired. I've had a long day and I don't feel like cooking, and my kids are starving and, waiting for dinner, and it's much easier to just, either go to the restaurant or go get fast food or whatever, or eat something unhealthy. So, kind of practically speaking, how do we do better?
Yeah, I certainly recognize the challenges of a busy lifestyle as well. And what I try to do is I try to work with people one-on-one to figure out what their challenges are. And I try to tackle one thing at a time. So let's start, if you think breakfast is your biggest challenge, let's start there. Or if you think dinner is your biggest challenge, let's start there. So depending on the individual, I try to say, let's change one habit at a time. If somebody is skipping breakfast or they're going through a drive-through or for breakfast, we'll come up with some ideas that work specifically for them that either they can prep on the weekends and have, let's say we're going to make egg bite frittatas. So we'll make, I'll get them a recipe. Let's grease the muffin tin. Let's beat up the eggs. Let's add in mushrooms and spinach. Let's make 12 of these on a Sunday. You can keep them in the fridge all week long. You grab two of them on your way out the door. So I'll try to come up with easy swaps for things that people like. I don't want to make it too different than what they're doing already. If they're telling me they are driving through a drive-through in the morning to pick up a breakfast sandwich, I'll help them come up with a much healthier breakfast sandwich idea. So I think small changes are easier than overhauling everything at once. And I also try to find ways to cut back on sugar throughout the day. So if you're putting sugar in your coffee, can we just cut that amount in half? Can we start there? And
Mhm.
let's see how that tastes. And then I would try to cut it down a little more and a little more. If they're drinking sugary drinks throughout the day, what can we replace it with? So just little steps to make improvements equate to big changes over time.
Mhm. Um, Kind of same question. What would you say to parents who have young kids who maybe has the Fruit Loops in the pantry and the Twinkies and the Little Debbies, and that's just, kids are used to eating all these snacks. What's your advice to parents?
Yeah, I love that question. I did work with kids for a number of years, and something I'm very passionate about is creating healthy eating habits early. So I think one of the biggest things that parents can do is model healthy eating behaviors. So showing kids that the parents are eating fruits and vegetables and sharing them with the kids. And even if you're trying a new vegetable with dinner, let's say your kid only likes corn. So make them the corn, but you're having broccoli, give them one piece of broccoli. Don't force them to eat the broccoli, just get them more familiar with the broccoli. And the more exposures they have to those foods, the more likely they are to accept them. Research shows it can take up to 20 tries before a kid might accept a new food, and that's okay. Putting it on their plate counts as an exposure, even if they don't taste it the first time. Just being patient and, like I said, modeling healthy behaviors. And I also think getting them involved is a really good tip. So take your kids to the grocery store and let them pick out a new fruit that they want to try. And then, in a safe way, let them help prepare that fruit. Let them help peel it or cut it safely, depending on the age. Let them get involved in it. They're more likely to want to eat that food if they had a hand in picking it out. They feel like they had some authority over what they're getting. And if they had a hand in preparing it, they're also more likely to eat it. So if we're talking about we already have Fruit Loops and Twinkies and things in the cupboards, I'm going to work with that parent to come up with reasonable swaps. So let's find if cereal is what we need to do because cereal is convenient in the morning for that family, let's find a much healthier cereal. What can we add, some unsweetened dried fruit to it instead of like a raisin bran with lots of added sugar? Can we find a whole grain cereal? Can we add some nuts or some fruits to make it a healthier option? What can we do to make a healthier swap? So that's kind of going back again to the smaller changes leading to bigger results. And if we're snacking on Twinkies or other ultra processed snacks, let's find them some other snacks. There's nutrition bars, there's snacks out there that are certainly on the better for you side. But I don't take the food company's word for it. I want to read the labels. I want to see in the ingredient section that I can pronounce everything in there. So I want to see that that snack we're picking for the child contains things like whole grains, nuts, seeds, fruits, everything I can pronounce, everything I would cook with. That's what I'm looking for when I'm reading ingredient labels and working with parents to find healthier snacks for kids.
Okay. Talking about fruits and vegetables, I will sometimes talk about the dirty dozen, which is
Mhm.
the 12 fruits and vegetables that are highest in pesticide content. And I'm always a little bit hesitant because if I'm trying to make some drastic lifestyle changes, I don't want to overwhelm people and say, well, you need to eat more fruits and vegetables. You need to quit eating all this processed stuff. Oh, and you have to make sure if you're eating one of these to get organic. And then, sometimes they just look at me real wide-eyed. And so, what, how do you talk about those kinds of things, or do you even mention that at first?
I mean, I would love if our food supply was mostly organic. That would be amazing. I do try to encourage parents to, if they can, make some organic changes with particularly what you're talking about, the dirty dozen. But I also try to meet people where they're at. If we're really far away from that conversation, I'm not going to start with that conversation. I'm going to start with let's eat some fruits and vegetables first.
Hmm.
Let's see what we can do there. Let's try to get up to 2 to 3 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, if depending on where we're starting. If we're starting from a better place, I might talk about organic sooner. I do try to bring up things like try to shop local. Do you have a farmer's market near you that you can go to? Also, a great opportunity to take the kids and let them pick out some things. Local produce is traveling less far, it's arriving to us with more nutrients. So maybe we can do that. I'll also use, like, if we're going to buy frozen fruits and frozen vegetables, that might be a more economical way to purchase organic than if you're purchasing fresh. So trying to work with them where they are and make some swaps that make the most sense.
Okay. Tell us, if you will, if you don't mind sharing about what your daily nutrition looks like. I mean, you've been doing this for a long time, and maybe that might help some listeners out there. I mean, give us an idea of what you eat for maybe breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks.
Yeah, I really try to follow a, a a plate method, let's say. So if we picture a whole plate, I'm going to divide that plate in half immediately. And for whatever meal or snack it is, I want it to be half vegetables and or fruit. So mostly vegetables, a little room for some fruit. The other half of my plate, I'm going to divide again, and I want lean protein, and I might want complex carbohydrates. If not, I'm going to use that other half and fill it up with more vegetables. So I'm prioritizing vegetables. That's where I'm starting with. I'm trying to add things instead of take away things. So focusing on having lots of vegetables, um, maybe some healthy fat like some avocado there, and some lean protein. For that's how I'm basing all of my meals. When I'm cooking a dinner, I'm thinking about half vegetables. I personally for breakfast will eat like those egg bite frittatas that I'm mentioning. I'll just hard boil some eggs and have it with some avocado and some raspberries. Sometimes I'll eat full fat yogurt with some berries and nuts. Sometimes I will, if I'm in a big hurry, I might just grab some sprouted grain or 100% whole grain bread and put some nut butter on it. I would eat any of those things for breakfast. For lunches, it's almost always a big salad with healthy protein, lean protein. I try to do some healthy fat, like some olive oil, some nuts, some avocado. Um, have a snack of like fruit and nuts in the afternoon. Usually, I vary the fruit and vary the nuts. And dinners can be a ton of different things. Even if I'm at a restaurant, I'm still thinking about half my plate being vegetables and the other half being split up between lean protein, maybe some complex carbohydrates. Um, so I kind of can use that method no matter where I am, whether I'm cooking, whether I'm out, whether I'm picking up something from a fast casual place, depending on what my day looks like. I'm always kind of thinking about those parameters for my meals.
Yeah. So if I'm advising somebody, one thing I might say differently. I'm just interested to see what your take is on this. Is I really usually I start with prioritizing protein, and I feel like that most people are not getting enough protein, especially as we age, and there's a lot of reasons for that. But one is I'm a big fan as muscle being a longevity organ, and the more muscle you have, the more or the better chance you're going to have be in good metabolic health. And there's a lot of things that go into that. But and I also feel like that protein is very satiating. And so if you're really prioritizing protein, eating protein first, then you're not going to eat as much, junk and as much of the other stuff. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of protein as well, both for me personally and for my clients that I work with one-on-one. If you poll any of them, when I'm talking about most, I think you'll hear vegetables and protein. So I'm completely in alignment with that. I think agree that it's much more satiating. So a lot of times I'm kind of counseling people on moving away from um, sugar. That's what I'm always talking about, decreasing
Hmm.
sugar and making sure that every meal and snack has a protein source. So I'm very much aligned with that. So when I'm thinking about my plate, a quarter of it is always protein.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice. Um, so talk to us about GoCoCo. And so this is an app that you're kind of the lead nutritionist with, and it's just a tool to help people eat better. And ultimately,
Yep.
that's what we're trying to do here. So talk a little bit about that, how you got involved, and just maybe tell us a little bit about what that app is, how it can help us.
Yeah, I've been working with GoCoCo for about a year and a half, and I've really loved it since I've discovered it. So it's easy. That's what I like about it. You just scan any food that has a barcode, and it gives you a health score. Like I said, 0 to 10. And then it also tells you why. So that's what I really like about it is there's an education component as well. So it'll say, here's why it got the score it did. Maybe there's added sugars. It lists every ultra processed ingredient in there and what that ingredient is. A lot of them are not we can't hard to pronounce, who knows what
Mhm.
they even are. So it'll tell you like, is this something I should be concerned about? What is it? It gives you suggestions for better for you alternatives right within the same category. So if you scan something like a cereal bar and it gets a 1, it'll give you suggestions for nutrition bars that have much better scores, and it also tell you why. So I really like the education component of it. And then if you're eating a newer feature we have, it's called a real food tracker. Anything you're eating, you can take a picture of it within the app, and the app will analyze what you're eating, and it'll tell you what percentage of it is ultra processed foods and what percentage of it is real foods. So what percentage of it is fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, whole grains. And again, it'll make some suggestions like this looks like a great meal. Next time, add some lean protein to stay satiated longer and better control blood sugar. And it can track it over time. So when you start with it, it can say like, okay, about 10% of your diet is fresh fruits and vegetables. Would you like to set a goal of 30 or 40%? And it'll help you reach those goals over time. So I love that there's a accountability, that there's education, that it's not just kind of alarming you to what's going on, but not giving you any solutions on how to fix it.
Hmm. And so you're saying you can take a picture of the meal. And so if you're
Mhm.
out to eat, obviously you can't,
Mhm.
there's not a barcode you can't scan. So you can
Right.
take a picture of your plate and it's gonna tell you bad or good, or that you should,
Mhm.
eat more of this or something like that.
Exactly. So it helps you make a better choice next time. If you take a picture of something you're eating at a restaurant, um, it might say this looks good, but next time you could do this to make it even better. Or it might say, it tries to stay somewhat positive. So it usually tries to start with something good about your meal and then make a couple of suggestions on what you can do to improve it even more. So that way, next time you're ordering something similar, you can make an even better choice.
Hmm.
And
What do you tell people when they ask you if about cheat meals, if they can just kind of go crazy on a Friday night? What do you usually say to that?
so I again like to look at the larger picture. So when you tell me go crazy on a Friday night, what is the rest of the time looking like? How healthy are we the
Hmm.
rest of the time? Like I of course think there's room for a little bit of indulgence and fun. I'm not here to take away all of that. But a lot of times when people tell me they want to do a cheat meal, it turns into like a cheat weekend,
Hmm.
which can then turn into a cheat Monday. And then I'm going to start tomorrow. So let's take a look at the overall picture and say, like, okay, what is it? Is it somebody's birthday? Like, what is it that you want to eat? Do you want to have a slice of cake after a healthy dinner? Fine, make it a small slice. I'm not going to stop you from having that once in a while. Is it you're going out with a lot of friends and it's a pizza night? Okay, have one slice of pizza, but have a huge salad with it as well. So I'm still going to try to find you some balance in that cheat meal. And also, we're going to talk about how much of your diet is a cheat meal versus how much of your diet is healthier.
Okay. So people listen to this and they're thinking, gosh, I know I got to get better. I've been eating really bad. I want to do one positive thing, like, tomorrow. I want to start doing one thing. What's the first thing they should do if somebody's listening and just wants to take the first step in the right direction?
Let's take stock of what you're doing. So, where is the thing that can make the most impact? Which meal is the least healthy? Which meal is the most ultra processed? Which meal has the most sugar? And let's start there. So, if we're doing like a coffee shop frappuccino with whipped cream every day in the morning, let's drink plain coffee. Let's add some half and half or, something like that instead of that 70 gram of sugar bomb that you're starting your everyday with. If you're not doing something like that and you're getting a fast casual lunch every day, let's figure out where we can make that lunch healthier. So let's take stock of what we're doing, figure out what might be the biggest offender to our health, and let's start with that place. Let's make a change there first.
Yeah. And I love the idea of this app. I mean, I really think that people need to utilize more of those kinds of things when they're at the grocery store. It's for you and I think it probably comes, it's just kind of second nature. I mean, we're in the store. Oh, that's crappy. That's crappy, but a lot of people just don't know. And to have a tool like this and to scan, oh, this isn't good. And this is why. And here's, another alternative. So I think things like that could be great. How can people find that GoCoCo app?
Yeah, so our uh, we're in the App Store
Okay.
for iOS and Android. Search GoCoCo app. There is a free version of the app, which has access to all the features that I mentioned. But there's also a premium version of the app that has unlimited scans, more tracking capabilities, just like a more personalized experience. And we are able to offer all of your listeners 1 year of the premium version for free. We can use code FITRX, and we could put more details about that in the show notes to
For
let
sure.
people know how to find us.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that. So, and you mentioned before we started recording that, and I don't think you mentioned it after we started recording about the study that you just saw
Yeah.
about processed foods. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that actually came out yesterday, done by the CDC, and it showed that over 50% of Americans, 50% of Americans' diet is ultra processed foods. So when I say let's find the biggest offenders and start there, if 50% of our diet is ultra processed, we definitely have a lot of room where we can make improvements.
Yeah.
And they're going kind of into some of the adverse health effects that have to do with eating that much ultra processed food. Metabolic health being a really big one.
Mhm.
And that's something that GoCoCo actually didn't start out to work on metabolic health, particularly diabetes. But what we discovered over time was that a majority of our user base were telling us that they were using GoCoCo to help manage their diabetes and their blood sugar.
Mhm.
So we actually added a couple of features to even better help that population. We added what we call a blood sugar alert. That's something you can opt in or opt out of if blood sugar management is something that you are concerned about. And it will put up an alert on foods that you scan that have high amounts of added sugars, refined grains, low fiber, low protein. So we're trying to really help with some of those kind of comorbidities that are associated with ultra processed foods, diabetes being a really big one.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, and like I mentioned, I mean, that's probably, I know people who listen to this want to really optimize their health, and that's probably I would say the two biggest things you can do to move the needle the most on improving your health are to limit ultra processed foods, and then the other one being exercise. So if you can do those two things, I mean, you're going to be way ahead of most people and be able to then hopefully minimize all the complications from that and chronic diseases and stuff like that. So which I
Yeah.
know that's a lot, but those two things of limiting processed foods and exercise are probably, we talk a lot of different things on this show, but those are in my mind probably the two biggest things you can do that's going to move the needle the most.
Yeah, and I liked what you said earlier about like longevity. We don't want to just want to live a long time, but we want to live a healthy time. So these tips that we're giving today are going to help ensure, help lead us to more healthier, longer years as well.
Yeah. And I really encourage you people go get the GoCoCo app. I mean, you get the premium version for a year, so definitely check it out and use that tool. So as we start to wrap up here, anything that I did not ask you that you want to throw out there?
I think we really covered a lot of it. Um, but I would just like to reiterate that it's never too soon to get started.
Hmm.
So don't wait till Monday. Don't wait till that tub of ice cream is gone. Let's start making healthy changes right away. There's never a better time than right this moment. And I really think the best place is to take stock of what you're doing currently and see where you can make some helpful changes. You know, Start reading the ingredients, start looking for things you can pronounce. Before there was a term ultra processed food, that's something that I was really focused on was when you read an ingredient list, I want to see like 5 ingredients, not 45 ingredients of things I can't pronounce. And you'll see companies that are promoting themselves as healthy. And I flip it over and I see the ingredients and there's 20 in there.
Hmm. Yeah.
And they're not vitamins that they're adding, they're ultra processed ingredients that they're trying to disguise as healthy. And, foods that more natural foods, we don't have to add vitamins in there. They naturally have the vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and all those things that play together in fruits and vegetables. So I would say don't wait. Let's get started right away.
Okay. Well, that's kind of a good preface for my last question, which that may be it, but I always ask my guests to give us one health tip that would make us healthier today. What would you say to that? Or like I said, you kind of already gave us a health tip, but anything else you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I would say like let's focus on real foods like we've talked about, try to make them a majority of our diet. Let's find small changes that can lead to big results. And I like your idea to compare it with moving our body or add it in with moving our bodies more. I like combining those two things as well. Very much in favor of that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Well, Miss Julie Rule, certainly appreciate your time and discussion on this very important topic of ultra processed foods. And again, I really encourage everybody to check out that app, GoCoCo. So thank you everyone for listening, and we will talk to you next time.